Welcome back to the show. I'm delighted to be rejoined again by Mr. Gerard Browne today. Gerard, how are you doing, man?
I'm all good, Morris, and yourself?
Not too bad. So it's been about a week since the international games, I suppose, kind of giving you a chance to kind of reflect on them rather than kind of go in at them in the heat of the moment. So we're just going to start with Portugal anyway, a game that I was actually out watching that. I was on holidays at the time in Centre Parks with the family, and I couldn't believe what I seen. It was like a completely different team. Like it was the first, from my experience anyway, real positive goal from a team that Stephen Kenny managed. I suppose Serbia away can be thrown in there a little bit as well, but I was really impressed with what I seen on the night, and if it wasn't for some very dodgy refereeing, I think we could have came away with obviously at least a point, but even a win.
Yeah, and probably a bit more world class finish as well from certain Cristiano Ronaldo. I think probably what swung that game. Yeah, going into that one, I wasn't too confident or too optimistic. I know Portugal maybe flatters his eve a little bit at the Euros, but you still would have been very, very wary of the quality that they had. We would have been worried about the fact that we didn't have that many players playing regular football going into that game. I think for the previous couple of weekends before that, we only had two starters in the Premier League, and I think was it Shane Duffy and Seamus Coleman. So I was kind of worried that we could be on the wrong end of a bad night there. But no, it was probably the most encouraging display so far of the Kenny era. Probably up there as you touched on with the Serbia away from earlier the campaign and the playoff against Slovakia as well. A game we probably should have won, but if we took our chances. But no, it was really encouraging. You probably would say maybe the game kind of suited us. We got that little bit of luck early on when Gavin Bazunu produced a brilliant save from Ronaldo penalty.
Yeah.
They didn't really kind of seem to be clicking in full gears early on. Joshua missed a simple chance when he hit the post. And they did leave a lot of space behind, and they gave Ireland a great opportunity with the two fullbacks. I thought Matt Doherty and James Coleman were excellent tonight.
Oh, brilliant.
Aaron
Yeah.
Connolly, who obviously has come in for a lot of criticism, I actually thought that he was done very, very well in that first half. Was a really good attacking outlet. Just sometimes his decision making let him down a little bit. But in fairness, I think one time when he was a bit hesitant whether to square the ball or to shoot, he ended up getting shot. He ended up shooting, getting blocked down for a corner. We actually scored from that resulting corner. And a good chance he missed in the second half. I think he should have had a penalty. I think that was probably the most annoying
Yeah.
refereeing decision of the night that didn't even at least go to VAR. With that one, and then probably just a combination of lack of concentration and tired bodies and just that extra bit of world class quality from Ronaldo, who was pretty anomalous for 90 minutes. But that's just a sign of the player that he is. He pops up with two headers. Probably the second one was absolutely unbelievable. It's as good as header as you see anywhere. And it's just annoying because even though I felt that our chances of making a tower were over before that game, I still felt even if we took something from that game, it still would have been a massive order. But it would have finally felt as if it would have been lift off for Stephen Kenny and he could finally get things going. And instead of maybe taking the positives from that game, as we're going to touch on now, it seems as if we probably seem to take more of the baggage from that into the Azerbaijan game 3 days later.
Yeah, one other player I think was a notable mention there, and I was kind of critical between friends, not on the show, but talking about him, and I didn't really know what he delivered, but I got a glimpse firsthand what the idea behind playing Adam Ida was. He was excellent against Portugal, and he was kind of
Yeah.
excellent throughout these three games, like really as well.
Yeah, I think he's actually really come of age in these three matches. I agree with you as well. I don't think I ever would have been publicly critical of Adam Ida, but I think I might have said this before as well. I just felt maybe when you watched him during the Nations League last year in the first few Kenny games, I know he's a player Kenny likes, but you probably felt that maybe he was just not quite ready yet for international football. They still had a lot
Maybe.
of development to go in the club game. Injuries as well, and a COVID setback probably didn't help him last year either. I didn't maybe get the run that we would have liked from an Irish point of view in the Championship with Norwich last year, but he's got a bit of game time in the Premier League now. I know he's only getting a handful of minutes off the bench in games, and he probably really needs to come on and have a goal contribution to really kind of stand out to Daniel Farke. But I thought in terms of like the type of performance Ireland would have had in that second half, a 1-0 up, back against backs against the wall type of job, kind of like a lone striker. I thought he just held up the ball excellent, killed time, winning a couple of frees, and just slowed the play down. I did felt maybe the Serbia game, 3 games in 6 days for someone who's not used to playing that much regular football. I think he did look a little bit tired in that game, but he still came into one stage and won a free kick. And a bit more lucky, probably should have scored against Azerbaijan. That's an area like a lot of Ireland's attacking players probably needs to work on a little bit more. And that's the one thing we are missing is someone who put the ball in the back of net regularly. But no, definitely a lot of encouragement. I think Adi either could walk away from that international window with his head held high.
And his Norwich teammate, I'll let you pronounce his name.
Andrew.
Yeah, Andrew. Yeah,
Andrew Omobamidele.
there we go. Yeah, I didn't practice that, so I knew that with you and the job that you're
I
in,
interviewed him there during the summer an FEI every sports summer camp launch, so I had to get it right for that, and it's stuck with me ever since. So.
And he's got his place now in the Norwich team. I seen he played against
Yeah,
Arsenal
made
the
his Premier
weekend,
League
which is
debut
great
there
for him.
last Saturday as well against Arsenal. They came off the wrong side, obviously, of that relegation 6-pointer.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying to people when that match was going into anyway. But yeah, really positive performance in Portugal, and very unlucky not to get anything out of the game. And then we come into the next game then, and obviously there's a few changes made to the team. Maybe a lot of people were saying maybe there was too many changes made to the team. What did you think with the way we set up in the second game and just of the game in general?
Yeah, like I found it very strange to think why someone like Jamie McGrath, fair enough, maybe why Stephen Kenny might have been looking from the point of view of a second game of this intensity for something he's not used to, obviously stepping up from the Scottish Premier League with St Mirren. But not to even bring him on, Jeff Hendrick as well, not to even bring him on, I just thought was strange after they played the previous full 90 minutes in the previous game. I felt there was maybe too many changes. I think we should have stuck with a fairly settled team, the team that worked well. I was kind of critical enough of him bringing in James McLean. Obviously, we understood that
He
Darryl
didn't. He
Shea wasn't
didn't
going
have
to
a
start
good
again.
game.
No, and obviously we understood that Darryl Shea wasn't going to start again, was injured. But as we're going to touch on later on, as Andrew Omobamidele showed his performance against Serbia, like why he didn't start against Azerbaijan again, maybe quick turnaround and young body, I don't know, but no, the Azerbaijan game was disappointing, and this is kind of it goes back to a lot of what I might have been saying maybe on other podcasts on my own channel and to other people as well. We talk about progress and under Stephen Kenny, and people are pointing towards the Portugal game, but to be making progress, you have to be kind of consistency now, kicking on with results and performances. And it just felt like deja vu from last March after a good performance away in Serbia. We then back it up with a horrendous result at home against Luxembourg, and we've done the same here again after a good performance away against Portugal. For me, draw with Azerbaijan, a team that didn't even have anywhere near the standout players in terms of the leagues and clubs they play with, compared to Luxembourg, who could at least points. They had a couple of decent players in decent leagues. Just for me, is unacceptable. It just wasn't good enough. And while we did create enough chances to probably win the game, there was a lot more tempo and urgency to our play than there was in the Luxembourg game. It was still looking at the same old Ireland that we've seen right down through the years. So just get the ball out wide, whip balls in the box, hope for the best. No real kind of creativity or anything else like that. Although our goal did come from a wonderful ball into the box by Josh Cullen, who I thought was probably our standout player in that game. It was disappointing. The first 10 or 15 minutes was really, really encouraging. We got a lot of joy down the right-hand side. Doherty had a chance, Coleman had a chance. And I couldn't understand why we didn't go down that side a lot more. We seemed to persist going down the left a lot. As you touched on, James McLean didn't have a good game. Seemed to waste a lot of ball. Aaron Connolly didn't seem to be as effective or lively or as a kind of a headache to defences as much as he was against Portugal in that game. Wasted a lot of ball. We just kind of played into their hands. I felt like the goal we gave away as well, was very, very unlike a player like Seamus Coleman, just to stand off and not press and allow that. Yeah, and he had all the time in the world. I think Gary Spain was saying he had something like 9 seconds on the ball, which was just ridiculous. Like when he got the ball, he had an absolute Scooby-Doo what to do. Like they were a very, very limited side. I know in the end Gavin Mizuno had to make a good save with his legs at 1-0, but they didn't really create much or offer much. And like it's a game we should have won, even though we didn't really play that particularly well. And it was a result that left me kind of question, like, right, you've had a couple of bad results, but like, the fact now we're not beating these teams we should be beating. If someone told you to start the campaign, you only take 1 point at home from Luxembourg and Azerbaijan. Whatever about not making Qatar and saying fair enough, we're building for the next campaign, but that is unacceptable. And like that would have been something that was a given. We would have felt would have been a given going into the campaign to take 6 points. And when you don't, it does pile pressure on, even though regardless of the result against Serbia, it was a good result, but it wasn't a good performance against Serbia, I felt either.
Yeah, we'll touch on that in a minute. But in terms of you're talking about like games like Azerbaijan that we should be winning at home. Like in years gone by, we should have been maybe thinking about taking 6 points for them and pushing for a playoff spot. Now, I thought after the first 2 games of this group that we were gone.
Yeah.
But then when I watched the performance against Portugal, I thought, if we can somehow win this game,
No.
then we were kind of back in it, But
No.
just the way it kind of there was a lot of positivity coming out of the Portugal game, and then to go into that Azerbaijan game and put in that kind of performance, I know there was a lot of players taken out of the team. But why do you think that was? Do you think it was down to he thought players would be too tired to play again, or what?
Probably, I suppose, look, at the end of the day, he might have. Look, I'm sure there was assessments and taken of what their body recovery was at. Like Jeff Hendrick, prior to then, hadn't played a Premier League minute for Newcastle. He played in the EFL Cup. As I mentioned, Jamie McGrath, massive step up from the intensity we've been used to playing in Scotland. Maybe they just weren't quite ready for it. I don't know, but like I still think the likes of Andrew Bamdeli, after the way he came in against Portugal, should have started that game.
Yeah.
I would have liked to have seen Callum Robinson come in, but I think Stephen Kenny touched on that. He said himself he wasn't quite ready after COVID. Now, I thought like to bring in Troy Parrish and going with himself, Conley and Eder was a from an outside it looked like an attack-minded move. Now it didn't pay off. Parrish was fairly anomalous in the game, but like going back to your kind of earlier point, like if you're to be brutally honest, the campaign was over after we even lost in Belgrade, because I kind of felt, realistically speaking, we would have to get something from that game. It was definitely over after what happened in the Luxembourg game, regardless of what happened in Portugal tonight, if we took something from that game. And I agree with you, I never expected us to get out of this group. I thought maybe third place, but I still think you should have to beat Azerbaijan and Luxembourg. Like, I think Luxembourg were the lowest ranked of the pot 4 teams, so basically you could say they were a pot 5 team.
Yeah,
it's not really kind of good enough, and like, without jumping too far ahead, I'm sure it's a topic we'll come to before we finish up, but like, as good as the result was against Serbia, as I touched on, I wasn't impressed with the performance. And for me, if he doesn't get 6 points, you would have to fear from going forward. Is he going to be in charge of the next campaign?
I kind of disagree a little bit from maybe it's too much of a positive perspective, but I'd be looking at the group and I'm thinking, right, Portugal are going to top that group. But I don't think, and as we kind of seen the other night, like Serbia were fairly wasteful against us. They could have won 4 or 5-0 another night. But I don't think that they're at the level that Portugal are at, though. And I think, like, if we played like we could historically with rise to the occasions against these so-called bigger teams, like, we could have had a chance of finishing second in this group, I reckon.
Possibly. I think that's a little bit optimistic. I still think if you look down through the quality and individual players in that Serbia squad and the clubs they play for, the Vlad's playing, Vlahovic scored 20 goals in Serie A last season. Like, I'm here talking to you about 2 Irish players starting in the Premier League. Like, and I agree with you. Like, I still don't think overall Serbia are going to make the World Cup, and it goes back to kind of another point as well. Even if we were to finish second in this group, we'd have to win 2 one-legged playoff games in the space of 3 or 4 days. That was going to be a massive ask. So it's very, very hard now for countries like Ireland to get to the World Cup. Like, you can even see with our neighbour Scotland, like, it's in their own hands to finish second in their group, but they even know themselves, even by finishing second, they still have another mountain to climb to make the World Cup. So it's going to be a big, big ask. I'd agree with you. I don't think Serbia are at the level of Portugal. I think, yes, they will finish second in this group and comfortably. That was probably a hammer blow for them, that draw, in terms of topping the group, because it would have set up probably a winner-take-all game themselves in Portugal. And now you think they're going to finish second. And I still don't think that probably will make the World Cup. Like, at the end of the day, they weren't at the Euros in the summer gone by either. Like, so while they are a very, very good team, now, for whatever reason, they never seem to qualify for European Championships. There's always does seem to be World Cups that they seem to peak for.
Yeah, they were absolutely devastated the other night when that final whistle went.
Yeah.
And I watched the punditry on RT and I watched the punditry on Virgin Media, and they were worlds apart. The punditry on RT was just very positive. This is great. And then on Virgin Media, then you have Brian Kerr, and maybe he still has some sour grapes from his time there as well. But he was saying, well, what are we celebrating for? And what are we up in arms for? We have 2 points out of 15. Does he have a point?
I think he definitely does. I think, look, first and foremost, I was saying to a lot of people I met up before the match, and just in general, Tuesday night in that game, I would take it. It was a good result, because I think Serbia are a better team than us in the moment. They are to put it this way, they're in their last campaign to qualify for the World Cup. I think they're a better team now than they were 4 years ago, and we're not as good as we were then in terms of personnel we have and everything else like that. And we're obviously in a rebuilding and transition phase. We're bringing through young players, but I agree. But like I think I can say definitely agree with Brian Kerr's point. Like 2 points from 5 games, we've had the two weakest teams in the group at home is not acceptable. You would have been at a minimum looking for 7 points to this group and maybe still be in a shout for a playoff. But I can kind of see it in the RT kind of point of view. Look, I was also the first to kind of say as well why it was a poor performance and we got lucky. Kenny deserved that break. He deserved that luck. He deserved a goal going in off an opposition player's backside. Because let's be honest, we never looked like scoring until then. But then typical Ireland of old, as you say, when we score, we seem to rise and play above ourselves. Duffy is a header that wasn't far away. Oma Bandetti nearly becomes a national hero with an unbelievable strike. Their keeper at the tip.
It just opened up for
amazing. Yeah, but it's amazing. Go right back to the Trapattoni days and more recent to Martin O'Neill. Once we score, suddenly we start to become the best team in the world. And it's the same way again the other night. Like, look, I do think there are positives to be taken from that game in terms of the result and everything else like that. It's a draw, but we really need now to start to be kind of kicking on and winning a lot more. Like, if this was club football, 1 win in 16,
you'd be gone.
Can you be gone? Yeah, and you have to remember as well, the Nations League is designed that you play against teams under similar standard. So we weren't playing against anyone in them 6 matches that were overly better than us. Now we drew 3 games and lost 3 of them by 1-0 or not goals. That probably does reflect we weren't that far away in reality. But we still should have been winning some of their matches. There's no excuse for not winning 2 games in this group. And I agree. I think Jonathan Walters was making the point on off the ball. I think on Wednesday night, like he really does need to start now if he wants to kind of back up his own points. He's making press conference. Have to start driving it on the pitch now and getting results. And for me, I don't really care about the Qatar game because it's only a friendly. But Azerbaijan and Luxembourg away, they just have to be won for me, or otherwise, I do think Kenny is in genuine danger of not being in charge for the next campaign.
It's good to see Shane Duffy back playing with a bit of confidence as well, though, isn't it, on the positive side?
Yeah, and even at the weekend just there gone by again, he put in another solid display for Brighton. So it's not like as if it was just a flash in the pan or a couple of games. He really seems to got back into his mojo and his gel again. Look, it's brilliant. I suppose you could point to the fact that he ended last season quite well from an Irish point of view. He had a very good performance that game against Hungary. Maybe he just took that kind of good vibe into the summer. Look, I think he was an easy scapegoat in Celtic last season. Celtic in general were an absolute shambles last season. I think it was easy just to point out at Shane Duffy, like they were a long, long way off the pace, and it wasn't just because of him. There was a lot of problems. And look, he moved to a new club, to a new city, in the middle of lockdown, with tense restrictions. He couldn't really do much. I'd say it was just a horrible time, and he obviously lost a lot of close family members as well. So he's back home in a comfortable environment in Brighton, and it just seems to be working well for him. And again, we talk about it. He went into a club last season that was in terrible form, and that just didn't help him. Brighton are flying at the season. They're ninth. Not ninth. They've 9 points. They're 6 or 7 at the table. They're a quarter of the way there to safety already after 4 games, and that's probably helping his performance as well. He's in a good kind of set environment. He's got a regular centre back partnership there with himself and Lewis Dunk. They were excellent going back as far as when they got promoted from the Premier League. They have a great understanding, and his Ireland performance of the last couple of days were really, really encouraging as well. He was arguably our best defender against Portugal, and again he could have been the hero with a late header against Serbia. And overall, in general, he done fairly well in that game. There was that one stage where Oma Bamdetti gave him a back pass, and he was very slow on the ball, and he gave away possession. But Bazunu was quick to come off his line and close down the angle. But in general, again, it's great to see the Shane Duffy of old come back in a green shirt.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a real leader as well in the team, and he's someone with experience that we need around these young guys as well, I think.
Sorry, I just lost you there with connection. If you just want to repeat that.
Oh, no bother. Yeah, I'm just saying that he's someone that's very useful for us with his experience playing around these young lads as well.
Yeah, that's one thing I've really noticed already. Himself and Gavin Bazunu seem to have an unbelievable understanding. Every time Bazunu makes a big save or an important save, an impressive save, he's always straight up to him to kind of let him know his appreciation, his love for him, and kind of encouragements and high fives and hugging him and everything else like that. It's great to see, and I'd imagine he's the same way as well around Darragh O'Shea and Joe and Bamdetti, like telling him into positions and stuff like that. I remember hearing a story about young Irish lads coming through at Brighton, like when Aaron Connolly was coming through and Desi who's gone down a different path in sport now, but they were always full of praise for just the way he was around younger players and the way he always looks out for them off the field. And he seems to be the exact kind of same way on the field. And he's got that captain's armband back as well. And like I said, it really has turned full 60 for him. Because in general, apart from maybe a couple of them performances in the Nations League last year, he hasn't really put a foot wrong for Ireland. Like, he was still brilliant in that playoff game against Slovakia. Obviously, he didn't play in any of the March games. I think he might have played against Qatar, but that was only a friendly. So he definitely is someone that I think is going to have a big save going forward for Ireland. Like, obviously, he's going to be 30 now in the new year, but you still think there's at least another 2 campaigns in him.
Yeah. So where do we go from here looking into the next round of fixtures is it October or November?
October, yeah. Back out again in about 4 or 5 weeks. It's Azerbaijan away. Well, that's probably the most important game on the Saturday,
Qatar,
which is probably good because every time an international window comes around, you kind of feel, right, the squad meet up for the first training session on Monday, and then let's fly out somewhere and there's a game on a Wednesday or Thursday. So now I think they have until the Saturday. I think we'll actually finally give Kenya a lot of time to, work with the players and maybe even give them a bit of recovery, a proper recovery session, especially anyone playing on a Sunday with their clubs. Like, you would have had Josh Cullen, for instance, playing on a Sunday, and then had to play the Portugal game on a Wednesday. It's very, very quick turnaround. So that's obviously the most important game. Then there's a Qatar friendly at home on the Tuesday night. Look, it's going to be a hard sell. It's only a friendly game, but hopefully still, people come out and get behind that game. But yeah, look, the campaign is done in terms of any mathematical chances of making the playoff. But I think it's vitally important that we try and end this campaign. We're getting 6 points from our last 3 matches. Hopefully, maybe if results go away, that might be enough to get us third. That would depend on Luxembourg not beating Azerbaijan away, which is possible. And, hopefully build and go forward towards another Nations League campaign and the Euros going forward to 2024, which I still think is a possibility for us to make. Like, we've seen how the format has changed now as well to qualify for that, and there's more teams. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility. But look, you can turn around and say there was a couple of positives to take away from this window. The Portugal performance, the Serbia results. Some people might even say the performance there as well. I'm not so sure. I'd be more on the Brian Kerr side of things on that one. But it has to now start driving on, and in order to really start seeing this progress, you have to start seeing more consistency, and we've got to start beating these teams that we should be beating. No more excuses now for me.
Yeah, the manager, like, there's absolutely no point, even if I'd be critical of the manager sometimes. There's no point sacking him now. He has to get
pointless.
He has to get to the end of this campaign. Yeah, I think we can all agree on that. But then I think there's got to be a serious assessment at the end of the campaign if things keep going this way,
Yeah. The only thing is, I will say, like, I do kind of like the style and approach and what, the philosophy, I suppose, that Stephen Kenny set out that he wants to kind of bring, and the style of play. Now, I'm not 100% sure if I've totally overseen that in this window. Like, I wouldn't say it was a brilliant passing performance against Portugal, which was a very, very good all-around
efficient performance.
Display. Yeah. Like, we didn't pass Azerbaijan, a team of lesser ability than us off the pitch, and we certainly didn't against Serbia. Like, only for a goalkeeper, we would have been beaten 4 or 5-1, I think, in that game.
Yeah.
So I do think, like, if the FAI do decide at the end of this, right, look, Stephen, you're not the man, but I still want them to kind of go down the route of someone of a similar philosophy and similar identity, and not kind of go back to safety first approach, or someone maybe like a Chris Hughton, who I think is on borrowed time at this stage in Nottingham Forest. And I work with a Nottingham Forest fan, and I know they're not happy at all. Not even just with the way things are going there, but just the style of football. Like, by chance, I actually watched the Nottingham Forest Cardiff game on Sunday. Forest were 1-0 up at half time and were playing brilliant football. And then they just set back in the second half and fighted pressure onto them. They lost 2-1. And Brighton fans will tell you the same about Chris Hughton. So I don't want to see that kind of type of appointment, or, a Big Sam. I don't think that's going to happen. But I want to see someone who is kind of going to encourage young players, who is going to try and encourage a good style of play and a philosophy of a similar route down to Stephen Kenny. So it's important that if the FAI do decide, right, Stephen, you're not the man in November, but to keep that in mind. Someone like Eddie Howe would be fantastic, but you also have to be realistic as well. Will Eddie Howe want to take over Ireland when he could easily get a Premier League job himself? And also, are the FAI going to be able to afford him?
I think if they're going to go down the line of simply kind of a stylistic manager, similar to Kenny, well, then it's going to have to be someone with experience, because you can see that that's kind of maybe the problem that he has.
Yeah, like, and you would probably even point to say that, well, there might be some good hits there on his management teams, like Dean Kidey, Keith Andrews, and Anthony Barry. I know Anthony Barry's with Chelsea, and he's highly thought of. But are any of them overly that experienced? No. And maybe that was somewhere he could have looked to get gone down, even by getting Damien Duff on board originally. Not an awful lot of experience there either. Like,
Yeah, yeah. But listen, it was great to catch up, and we'll probably catch up then in October, and we'll see how things are after these next two games. I know one of them is kind of a dead rubber anyway, but hopefully they get a good turnout. I think they might have to lower the price of the tickets for that Qatar game because it's just what it is and the opposition, and hopefully even get a nice full house there at that one.
yeah, and in fact as well, to choose a night as well, so midweek night. Like, I think if common sense prevailed, 10, 15 euro for a ticket, but knowing the FAI, I don't see it any cheaper than 25, to be honest. But yeah, it's good catching up,
Yeah.
Morris, and hopefully next time we do chat, we'll have two wins to talk about, and that things will be heading in the right direction for Stephen Kenny. Because look, like anyone in charge of Ireland, you always want to see your manager in charge of your team do well, because it's a sign that the team is doing well. He's not under pressure. So look, I'm still wanting to work out for Stephen Kenny, but as I said, like you still do have your doubts, as I think this window is showing as well.
Yeah. Thanks a million, Gerard.
No worries, Morris.
Good to catch up.